Truth doesn't scream, it whispers, precisely where you were taught to stay silent. Most people don't live, they obey, and they confuse obedience with wisdom. From a young age, we were taught to fear doubt, to treat questioning as sin, to see independent thought as betrayal. But the real crime was believing guilt for thinking was ever natural. Truth doesn't hurt. What hurts is the programming that made you fear what was yours. You're not afraid of truth. You're afraid of what it might destroy. Because finding your truth means breaking contracts. Contracts with people you were taught to love, even when they erased you. Contracts with institutions that promised heaven while monetizing your soul. Contracts with systems that reward repetition and punish awareness. For years I obeyed. I was the good son, the enlightened seeker, the praised professional, until my body started to fail. Not from illness, from disconnection, a pain that didn't show up on tests but split open in the silence of night. That's when I realized I wasn't living. I was adapting, shrinking, silencing myself in exchange for a peace that only served others. And why does this matter now? Because we are in the collapse of meaning. The structures that once told you this is right are breaking down. The ready-made truths are dissolving. And the emptiness you feel isn't lack of faith. It's an overdose of inherited lies. When the soul begins to awaken, the body begins to break. It's not punishment. It's a signal. It's the beginning of rupture. I didn't find my truth in meditation. I found it in the desperation of not being able to lie anymore. In the rage of realizing I had been domesticated. In the terrifying clarity of questioning what I was told to worship. And in that dark, brutal, silent space, something real finally began to vibrate. You weren't taught to think. You were trained to obey. From the earliest years, every uncomfortable question was met with disapproving looks, subtle punishments, or moral lessons disguised as love. You learned quickly. Those who question lose affection. Those who doubt are pushed away. Those who think differently become threats. So your mind was conditioned to choose approval over truth. And that choice became an addiction. School didn't teach you how to feel or reflect. It taught you how to repeat. You memorized dates, revered names, obeyed rules that were never explained. You called it education, but it was indoctrination. You weren't prepared for life. You were shaped to fit. Fit into a society that rewards obedience and punishes depth. You became informed but emotionally amputated. A thinker without presence. At home, the conditioning was even more subtle. You saw that certain truths couldn't be spoken, that some wounds were protected by strategic silence. You understood. Questioning creates pain, and hurting those you love makes you ungrateful. So you adapted. You silenced your insights. You buried your emotional reflexes. You became an expert in survival at the cost of self-expression. Religion often delivered the final seal. Don't think, believe. Don't feel, obey. Don't ask, surrender. You were told that faith meant silence. That doubt was the devil's playground, and your soul was locked inside a vibrational prison, where even your thoughts felt like they were being watched by a God who demanded obedience, not intimacy. You don't fear truth because you're weak. You fear it out of loyalty. Loyalty to the people who taught you love through silence. Loyalty to the version of yourself that survived by playing small. But that loyalty comes at a price, a gradual loss of soul. And the emptiness you feel, even when surrounded by answers, is your soul trying to return home. You are not one. You are many versions, each built to survive in places where thinking was dangerous. There's a version of you that smiles when your body wants to scream. One that shrinks every insight into, maybe I'm just overreacting. Another that speaks only what won't offend, that stays neutral even when truth is dying in the room. These aren't flaws. They're shields, personas designed to protect you from emotional exile. Shadow doesn't mean what you hide from others. Shadow is what you hide from yourself to keep functioning. It's the fake calm when rage wants to rise. The everything's okay when your chest is caving in. The spiritual tone used to bypass your own grief. Jung said, "We become neurotic when we accept false values. You accepted the value of silence, of obedience, of appeasement, and now your nervous system flinches every time truth dares to surface. Your emotional field is leaking. The body trembles with things you won't say. The voice cracks when truth tries to emerge, and yet you perform, the calm one, the open one, the wise one. But behind that calm is exhaustion. Behind that wisdom is fear, and the soul watches, waiting to be chosen. You began to identify with your defenses. You thought you were the peaceful one, the spiritual one, the forgiving one. But you're not. You're the one hiding behind those masks, exhausted by the performance. The body knows. It flinches. The heart knows. It whispers. And every time you ignore it, your field fractures more. The fragmentation shows up when everything in your life looks fine, but something is off. You're not fully living. You're maintaining, managing, negotiating truth to keep things comfortable. But truth doesn't negotiate. It waits until the masks fall, until the body stops pretending, until the soul breaks the silence, with or without your permission. You think you're free because you can choose what to consume, what to post, what to believe. But the freedom you were sold is just a selection of options inside an emotional prison. Most people live inside a vibrational bubble where thinking differently gets you exiled, where disagreeing is labeled toxic, where questioning sacred systems becomes spiritual arrogance. And in this matrix, you still obey, just with prettier language and softer lighting. You believe you're choosing, but you're still reacting to the same emotional triggers. Guilt, fear, the need to be accepted. You say, this path feels aligned, but underneath you're vibrating with fear of being rejected if you deviate. You repeat beautiful phrases but can't hold the raw truth behind them, because false freedom demands that you look awake, even if you're deeply disconnected from yourself. The new prison is elegant. It doesn't forbid you to speak. It convinces you not to ask. It says not the right time. Don't manifest negativity. Be more grateful. So you self-censor, not out of ignorance, but out of vibrational loyalty. You've learned that doubting what everyone worships means risking belonging, and that's when you realize the real prison has no bars. It has applause. You consume knowledge. You dive into healing, but you're still obeying internal structures that keep you silent. You say you're searching for truth, but you're terrified it might contradict your mentors. That's not seeking. That's spiritual dependency. And the emptiness you feel, even surrounded by tools, is the echo of a soul tired of pretending it's awake. Real freedom begins where the need for acceptance ends. And to get there, you'll have to disappoint people, icons, belief systems, and especially old versions of yourself. It will hurt. It will feel like betrayal. But the real betrayal is continuing a role that no longer vibrates in you. False freedom rewards you with applause. Real freedom demands mourning. Breakthrough doesn't happen when you discover a new truth. It happens when you can no longer lie for the sake of connection. When staying silent becomes more painful than being misunderstood. When your body begins rejecting every place where your soul is unwelcome. That's when rupture arrives, not as trauma but as sacred rebellion. Rebuilding yourself is an act of vibrational treason. You'll have to betray the persona you created to survive. The agreeable one, the spiritual one, the palatable one. You'll have to look that version in the eye and say, "Thank you for keeping me safe. But I choose to live now." And that choice isn't light. It comes with grief, the death of roles, routines, reputations. But what rises in its place is something obedience could never give you: presence. You rebuild when you stop waiting for energetic permission to exist. When you realize your truth doesn't need to be understood, only honored. When you no longer seek validation from people still hypnotized by comfort. That's when your energy shifts. You walk different, speak different. Not because you're better, but because you've stopped vibrating guilt. You don't need more tools. You need the courage to unlearn. To say, "I don't believe that anymore," without apology. To bless what was true and still let it go. Because truth isn't a statue. It's a frequency. It moves. And if you stay loyal to a past truth, you've already entered a lie. Reconstruction isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you were before you were taught that questioning was dangerous. It's about reclaiming the part of you that asked hard questions, that confronted contradictions, that didn't shrink to belong. That part still lives, and it's done waiting. In the end, there is no enlightenment, only coherence, a quiet, unwavering alignment between what you feel, what you say, and what you hold. When that clicks, the world outside doesn't change, but your relationship with it does, because real power doesn't come from being right. It comes from no longer asking for permission to be. Truth doesn't arrive with celebration. It arrives with silence. An eerie, beautiful silence where the echo of who you used to be begins to dissolve. And in that stillness, something new, or maybe something ancient, begins to hum. You feel it in the way you stop explaining yourself, in the breath that no longer carries guilt, in the gaze that no longer looks for approval. Then you realize, it was never about convincing anyone. It was about ending the performance, ending the smiling when you wanted to scream, ending the shrinking just to keep peace, ending the betrayal of your soul in exchange for borrowed love. Truth hurts, not because it wounds, but because it dismantles. It strips the ornaments off your ego. It leaves you raw, but it also makes you real. Now it's your turn. Not to fix the world, but to stop being its echo, to choose with every step, every breath, every word, your truth. Even when it costs you comfort, even when it costs you belonging, even when it costs you everything, because nothing is heavier than living a life that isn't yours. Comment below. I choose my truth, even if it costs me everything. Share this with someone still silencing themselves to stay accepted. And if you're ready to keep breaking the pact of silence, subscribe now. Truth doesn't scream, it sets you free in silence.